Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people want more police accountability in the country. And folks are talking about police reform, but another thing is on the table that people want considered is defunding the police. So this came out in The Guardian, June 6, 2020. What does defund the police mean? The rally cry sweeping the U.S. explained. The call to defund the police has become a rallying cry at protests across America this week, and some lawmakers appear to be listening. Activists who have long fought to cut law enforcement budgets say they are seeing an unprecedented wave of support for their ideas, with some elected officials for the first time proposing budget reductions and divestments from police. Here's what we know about the movement and how cities and states are responding. What does it mean to defund the police? For many community groups have advocated for defunding law enforcement, taking money away from police and prisons, and reinvesting those funds in services. The basic principle is that government budgets and public safety spending should prioritize housing, employment, community health, education, and other vital programs instead of police officers. Advocates argue that defunding is the best way forward since attempts to reform police practices over the last 5 years have failed, as evidenced by the brutal killing of George Floyd. Groups have range of demands, with some seeking modest reductions and others viewing full defunding as a step towards abolishing contemporary police services. How much does America currently spend on police? In the past 4 decades, the cost of policing in the U.S. has tripled and is now at $115 billion, according to a recent analysis. That steady increase comes as crime has been consistently declining. In most cities, spending on police is significantly greater than spending on services other departments. $1.8 billion on police in Los Angeles, for example, which is more than half the city's general fund. COVID-19 economic crisis has led cities and states to make drastic budget cuts to education, youth programs, art and culture, parks, libraries, housing services, and more. But police budgets have grown or gone largely untouched until pressure from protests this week. How are lawmakers addressing the calls to defund? Almost overnight, and in direct response to protests, some mayors and other elected leaders have reversed their position on police funding. The mayor of LA said he would look to cut as much as $150 million from the police. Just 2 days after he pushed forward a city budget that was increased by 7%. A New York councilman has called for a $1 billion divestment from the NYPD. The Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and other cities. Local policymakers have expressed support for some form of defunding or opposing police budget increases. Most radically, in Minneapolis, council members have discussed potentially disbanding the embattled police department altogether. Colleges, public school systems, museums, and other institutions have also divested from the police. The change in direction is monumental, but the size of the proposed cuts is not. Activists have said in LA, Black Lives Matter has been pushing for a people's budget that advocates just 5.7% of the general fund to law enforcement instead of 51% of the mayor's plan. More broadly, long-standing abolitionist groups such as Critical Resistance and MPD 150 argue that cities should not be looking for minor savings and cuts, but should be fundamentally reducing the scale and size of the police force and dismantle the traditional law enforcement system. That can start with finding non-police solutions to the problems poor people face, such as counselors responding to mental health calls and addiction experts responding to drug abuse. If cities defund police, will crime increase? No, it shouldn't. If they're out there really genuinely doing their jobs, no. Abolitionist groups argue that policing and prisons are at the core racist and harmful and make communities less safe. They also point out that the vast majority of police work has nothing to do with responding to or preventing violence, and that police have a terrible track record of solving murders or handling rape and domestic violence. Yeah, like Chicago, they hardly resolve any murders. While there is no contemporary example of defunding the US police, there are studies suggesting that less policing would mean less crime. Yeah, because they're the ones really driving all the crime up. In 2014 and 2015, New York officers staged a slowdown to protest the mayor, arguing that if they did less police work, the city would be less safe. But the opposite turned out to be true. When the officers took a break from broken window policing, meaning targeting low-level offenses, there was a drop in crime. Researchers said that aggressive policing on the streets for petty matters can ultimately cause social disruption and lead to more crime. Policing that punishes poverty, such as hefty traffic tickets and debt, can also create conditions where crime is more likely. When New York stopped and frisk ended, crime did not rise. Yeah, stop and frisk really didn't catch too many people at all. It was a waste of time. America's powerful police unions have long resisted even minor reforms and accountability measures, and are predictably arguing without evidence that budget cuts at any scale will make cities less safe. No, it won't. They've cited looting and property damage in protests this week to suggest that cities don't have enough officers. Defunding advocates, however, have pointed out that the highly militarized response to peaceful demonstration and the aggressive and at times violent ways officers are handling protesters has only provided further evidence that police cause harm when there's no public safety threat in the first place. Exactly. This is everything the Black community have been saying all along. These cops are causing the problem. They're not fixing anything, and they're not the solution to the problems out here. We've been saying that forever. America's legacy of racism and severe gun violence epidemic make it difficult to compare to other countries. But some have pointed out that compared to peer nations, the US spends significantly less on social services and more on public safety programs. and has astronomically higher incarceration rates. These investments in police and prison, however, don't translate to a safer country. In fact, police in America kill more people in days than many countries do in years. Oh, I believe it. No, cops do not make us safer. We have never seen that in the Black community. We have never seen any instances where cops have made things safer. They simply don't at all. Ladies and gentlemen, please tell me what you think. I think, especially if you got somebody like Trump in office that don't even want to address police reform, I think defunding them is the next best thing, because see, that can be done on the state and local level. And that might be the better thing to do, especially if you got a president that you absolutely cannot rely on to do the right thing, because he is content with the cops being out here and going over the top with the Black community. He's fine with it. So it is going to take politicians on the state and local level to try to do something to curb all of the violence that's coming from the police. So defunding, I'm definitely for that. Let them get less money. And that means less money going into the unions too. This is a perfect idea. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.